I grew up believing my father was just a simple craftsman. He spent hours in the workshop behind our house, cutting wood, sewing, and painting. He said he made collector dolls to sell at craft fairs. I wasn't allowed to go in there. It was the #1 rule in the house. Workshop is off limits.
When I was 7, I asked why.
Because it's dangerous. Sharp tools, nails, scissors.
But there was something else. A strong smell coming through the crack of the door. A mix of glue, wood, and something sweet, almost rotten. Childhood passed with that mystery. My friends would come over to play, and my father would always show up smiling, but no one was allowed inside the workshop. Sometimes I would catch a glimpse through the side window of human-shaped forms hanging, like life-size dolls. He said they were dressmaking mannequins.
When I turned 14, I started noticing TV reports about missing children in the area. The faces appeared in the newspaper, and sometimes they seemed oddly familiar. One day, during breakfast, I recognized the t-shirt one of those children was wearing, identical to one on a doll I'd seen hanging in the workshop days earlier. I asked if it wasn't a coincidence.
It's just clothes bought at the thrift store.
Time passed. I left home to study, visiting rarely. He became a widower, and the workshop became practically his whole life. When he died, I received the house key and a recommendation from the lawyer. There are belongings in the back you might want to see. On the first day of sorting things out, the smell hit me again, stronger than ever. The workshop was intact. Tables covered with fabric scraps, boxes of buttons, and shelves with dolls perfectly lined up. They weren't ordinary dolls. They were hard to realistic. The skin had variations in color, imperfections, even scratches and scars. The hair was natural, not nylon. Some of the eyes were glass, others looked real. One of them made me step back. It wore a floral dress I remembered from a newspaper article, the girl who went missing in 2003. Another wore a soccer jersey identical to that of a boy who vanished in 2007.
In the corner, there was a locked cabinet. I forced the lock. Inside were dolls that weren't on display. They had rough stitches on the nape of the neck and on the hands. The sweet, rotten smell came from them. One smaller doll had a broken tooth. I recognized it. When I was a child, I had a friend named Bia who disappeared after playing in my yard. She had a tooth like that. My stomach turned. I realized some of the dolls were wearing clothes I'd seen in old photos of myself. My clothes, which had gone missing from the laundry years ago. At the back of the cabinet, there was a small wooden box. Inside, envelopes with labels, names, and dates. Each contained teeth, locks of hair, small pieces of children's clothing. One of them had my name inside it. A piece of my first favorite t-shirt, a strand of my hair, and 2 photos. One of me sleeping and another of me sitting in the yard, looking at the camera without knowing I was being photographed. I started hearing noises in the workshop, even when it was empty. Light footsteps, fabric dragging. Once, when I went in, I noticed one of the dolls had changed position. It was facing the door, as if watching me.
On the third night, I woke to the sound of something lightly knocking on my bedroom door. I gathered courage, opened it. Nothing. But in the hallway, a doll was standing, leaning against the wall. I didn't remember moving it there. The stitching on its neck was open, revealing something that looked like dried flesh. I decided to get rid of everything. I put the dolls in large bags and planned to take them to the trash.
but when I went back to the workshop for the last one, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A doll sitting on the workbench turned its head toward me. The eyes, which I could have sworn were glass, blinked. I ran out and locked the door. The next morning, the padlock was open. When I tried to tell the police, I got incredulous looks. They took some dolls, but never told me what they found. Days later, an officer called suggesting I drop the matter.
But at night, I still hear the sound of creaking wood and light footsteps in the back of the house. Once, I saw through the kitchen window a childlike shadow running from one corner of the workshop to the other. The worst happened last week. I woke up with the sensation of being watched. When I turned my head, I saw a doll in the corner of my room. It was small, dressed in a shirt of mine from when I was about 8 years old. The mouth was sewn shut, but the whole body trembled slightly, as if breathing.
He said you are going to stay with me forever.
Since then, I haven't slept. The workshop is still out there, intact. And every time I walk down the hallway, I feel the dolls have changed places. I think that, even dead, my father is still taking care of the collection. And somehow, I think I'm part of it now.
I never believed in ghost stories. I was always the one laughing at legends. But in the summer of 2019, everything changed. My husband, Daniel, died in a car accident. It was raining, the road was slippery, and he never came back home. It was just me and our 6-year-old daughter, Lara. I kept her room exactly as he had left it. Star curtains, blue nightlight, and a shelf of books. I thought that would help with grief. The first week, Lara told me, happily, that Daddy came to tell her a story before bed. I thought it was imagination. She described the smell, rain and mint gum. Daniel used to smoke in secret and chew gum after. That detail chilled me, but I ignored it. The reports continued. She said he told her the story of the girl in the submarine, one of his silly inventions. Then one night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of breathing outside my bedroom door. It wasn't wind or pipes. It was someone standing, breathing, irregularly, like a smoker. I stayed still until it stopped. At breakfast, I didn't say a word. Neither did she. Days later, I bought a baby monitor with a camera for her room and another for the hallway. I showed it to Lara.
She said, naturally.
He doesn't like cameras.
I asked, who?
No, Daddy.
My stomach twisted. That night, I kept watch on my phone. At 1:37 a.m., the image of her room flickered, and I heard,
"Good night, princess."
It was his voice. I ran, turned on the light. Nothing. Just a fresh mint smell in the air. A friend who knows about technology said it was interference. I wanted to believe that, but days later, the hallway camera caught a dark blur, and Lara's door had scratch marks in the paint the next morning.
He sneaks in slowly so he won't wake you up.
On Friday, I heard again.
"Today it's going to rain."
And he told the submarine story. Minutes later, thunder shook the windows. Coincidence or not, the weather worsened. Lara began to sleep better, happier. She started drawing her dad in a worn-out t-shirt, unshaven, with something black dripping from his sleeves.
It's the shadow of the submarine.
One Monday, I woke up on the couch with a blanket over me, which I didn't remember pulling. The recording showed a dark figure leaning over me, touching my hair.
Danny, if that's you, stop.
I whispered.
I decided to go through this thing. At the bottom of the box, I found an envelope with strands of Laura's hair tied with red thread, a used black candle, and a paper with a circle and strange symbols. It said,
"To protect forever. Protecting is caging. Caging is staying."
In Laura's room, behind a book, there was a child's note.
Daddy said I'm safe if I don't open the door for anyone else, even if you call.
I asked my brother to stay the night. At 2:21 a.m., both cameras turned on by themselves. The bedroom light flickered and the audio turned to static.
I see you.
We ran to Laura's door. Daniel turned slowly. I asked,
Danny?
silence. Then,
Good night, princess.
it was different, cold. I forced the door and Laura was sitting on the bed smiling. The curtain swayed with the window closed. The next day, we installed new cameras. That night, an alert. Person detected, Laura's room. The image showed, for a second, a man sitting on the edge of the bed wearing a festival t-shirt Daniel loved. The wedding ring was identical to his. When he noticed the camera light, he turned into a blur and vanished. I decided to sleep with Laura. She cried.
He gets upset if I don't stay in my room.
At 4 a.m., I woke up with a hand stroking my hair, a kiss on my forehead, and
Good night, princess.
But it wasn't for her. It was for me.
the next day I went to a healer. She lit a candle and said,
Some things come from love and learn the taste of fear. You will burn what you have of him that isn't memory.
At night, I waited for Laura to sleep and went to the backyard with the black candle, the hair, and the paper. I lit it. The smoke smelled like mint. I said,
"Thank you for protecting. Now I'll take care of her."
behind me, I felt someone's presence. Laura screamed from the living room. I ran. The TV was on a blue screen. The baby monitor, unplugged, showed her room empty except for a shadow in the corner.
The voice uttered,
If you don't let me protect, who will?
I answered. Everything went dark. Since then, the house has been silent. Laura went back to sleeping alone, and the submarine drawings disappeared. But 2 weeks ago, at 4 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, short breathing.
I see you.
Now sometimes I stand at her bedroom door, lights off, and whisper into the dark, "Good night, princess," and hope it's only my voice answering.
My name is Clara, and until a few months ago, I was absolutely sure I knew every detail about the man I married. Raphael was always the kind of present father. He told stories, wrestled on the living room floor, took our 8-year-old daughter, Helena, to school every day. But one day, I realized something had changed, and not in an ordinary way.
It all began on a Saturday morning. Helena was drawing in the kitchen, smiling, and said,
New daddy is way more fun.
I thought it was a joke. I asked what she meant, but she only laughed and said,
Old daddy only worked. New daddy tells funny jokes and lets me stay up late.
I thought it was strange, but didn't insist. Raphael really was different. More patient, more playful, but there was something off. Little things. He got Elena's friends' names wrong. He put sugar in his coffee when he had always taken it black. And he didn't know where the glasses were kept in the kitchen. One night, I woke at 2:34 a.m. and noticed his side of the bed was empty. I heard giggles coming from Helena's room. I walked over slowly, and what I saw stopped me in the hallway. Through the crack in the door, there were 2 male silhouettes in the room. One sitting at the edge of the bed, the other standing still, in the shadow. Helena laughed, looking at the man sitting down. I couldn't make out either of their faces in the dark. When I turned on the light, there was only Raphael, sitting, smiling.
I was just telling a story.
The other figure had vanished. At breakfast, I asked if he had gotten up during the night.
No, I slept until the alarm.
From then on, I noticed worse things. When I hugged him, his skin felt different. It wasn't visible, but the touch felt cold, almost artificial. The smell had changed too. Raphael had always smelled of lavender soap, but now there was a metallic odor, like wet coins.
Helena kept talking about the new daddy. One day, while drawing, she made 2 identical men, one with an exaggerated smile and the other with a neutral face. When I asked who they were, she answered,
The 2 daddies.
That night, I decided to stay awake. At 3:10 a.m., I heard slow footsteps in the hallway. I got out of bed and saw Raphael entering Helena's room. I followed behind, but when I pushed the door open, he was already lying in bed next to me, as if he had never left.
My heart raced. I checked the bed and he was warm, grieving normally. But I knew I had seen something. I decided to put a hidden camera in Helena's room. The next day, reviewing the footage, my blood froze. At 2:58 a.m., the door opened by itself. A man identical to Raphael entered. Same hair, same beard, but the smile was wrong. He bent down next to the bed and whispered something in her ear. Helena smiled and hugged his neck. Then, silently, the figure stood up and moved to the corner of the room. He stood there motionless, while seconds later, another Raphael entered through the door and sat on the bed. They were in the same room for less than 5 seconds, but never looked at each other. The first, amidst the shadows, simply retracted to the corner until he disappeared, as if the darkness engulfed him. I showed the video to Raphael.
That must be editing.
I asked to leave that house for a few days.
You're paranoid.
The next night, I woke up to the sound of 2 voices in Helena's room. I peeked and saw something that took my breath away. 2 identical men sitting on each side of the bed. Helena looked at one, then the other, as if choosing between them. One of the Raphaels looked at me. His eyes were black, not brown, not with light, just solid black. They smiled without blinking. I woke on the hallway floor, not remembering how I had fainted. In the room, there was only Raphael and Helena asleep. I spent the next 2 days locking doors and keeping Helena close. On the 3rd night, the other came for me. I opened my eyes and saw Raphael standing at the edge of the bed, or at least he looked like him. But his face had no expression. He leaned closer, almost touching his nose to mine, and whispered,
You're not the original?
I stepped back and moved into the hallway. I screamed for Raphael, who came running from the kitchen with a cup of tea.
I swear I was there the whole time.
Desperate, I sought a child psychologist for Helena. She said the girl spoke of the 2 daddies naturally, as if it were normal. It didn't seem like a dream or imagination. For her, it was reality. That night, I locked Helena's room and kept the key in my pocket. At 3 a.m., I woke to a dry, scratching sound, like nails on wood. The doorknob turned slowly. I sat on the bed, holding my breath. A deep male voice spoke from outside.
She's mine. You know it.
The sound came from inside and outside. When I finally got the courage to open the door, there was nobody to be seen. The next day, I installed cameras throughout the house. At 2:46 a.m., I got an alert, motion detected, living room. I ran to the monitor. The video showed Raphael sitting on the couch, motionless, staring at the camera. But Raphael was asleep beside me in bed. I looked at him. He was breathing peacefully. When I returned to the monitor, the image was static. 2 nights later, I woke to Helena crying. I ran to her room and found the other kneeling beside her bed. When he saw me, he smiled far too wide, stood up and walked into the wall and disappeared inside it. The surface never moved, but he vanished as if absorbed.
He said the real daddy is trapped.
The next morning, Raphael left for work. I locked the house, sat on the floor of Helena's room, and waited. At 2:17 p.m., I heard the front door open. Footsteps. I called his name. No answer. In the hallway, his shadow appeared, but his body was blurred, like an out-of-focus image. When the sunlight hit, the figure dissolved. From that day on, Raphael grew more and more distant. Fewer touches, fewer conversations. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and find him standing in the dark, watching us. The last night was the worst. I woke to Helena screaming. I ran and found 2 identical men shoving each other in the room. Both shouted,
It's me. I'm Daddy.
The voice was the same. Helena cried in confusion. Suddenly, one of them looked at me and said,
Choose.
The other just repeated,
Please.
I didn't choose. I grabbed Helena and ran. Behind us, I heard a heavy thud, like flesh hitting the floor, followed by absolute silence. The next day, Raphael didn't come home. Neither Raphael did. I called his job. They said he hadn't shown up in weeks. Now, when I walk through the house, I feel like someone is still here. At night, sometimes I see a shadow standing in the corner of Helena's room. Other times, I wake to calm breathing beside me. Helena doesn't talk about new daddy or old daddy anymore, but when we draw together, there are always 2 male figures, one with a normal smile, another with a smile that seems bigger than it should be. And deep down, I think one of them is still waiting for me to choose.